Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Shake your tail,
I'm
feather.
Jason Harris. Yep, filmmaker, comedian. And it's been less than a minute. We'll have to play it 20 more times during the episode.
No, please. I didn't know what you were going to sing. I thought you might be singing I guess you would call it the theme song that they've appropriated for this, but
I mean,
anyway.
in a way, what, Bad Boys?
Yeah.
No, that's the Shake Your Tail Feather, which was that background beat is in this like 700 times.
Oh, see,
that's what I'm saying. I don't know if you saw my tweet about it, but I Googled how many times for this. I Googled how many times do they play it, and the AI answer was 1 time. And I'm like, AI is just pure bullshit because it's 17 times
at least.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize that.
Is that because of my singing or because you checked out during this movie?
No, because if you had asked me, your singing certainly leaves a lot to be desired as always. But if you had asked me, is there a song that they play 17 times in this movie? I would have said no, not that I recall.
It's like a throwback to, Mrs. Robinson and The Graduate.
Yeah, Michael Bay and Mike Nichols really linked there. Stop. You're gonna. No one's gonna listen to this episode. They're just gonna turn it off because you keep yelling in their ear.
I'm a bad boy, Josh.
You are, and Dave is also a bad boy for picking this film. We're here in our special retrospective 20th season. And we had a draft picking past years that we've covered in past seasons, each of us picking some movies from those years. And as Jason and I have discussed multiple times, I, being a rookie at drafting, did not understand strategy and failed to block Dave from making his first pick. What is that, Dave?
It is Bad Boys 2.
From 2003.
Yeah, so Josh, you really learned the lesson on this one, I think.
I did, because I had to watch Bad Boys 2.
You learned it the hard way, for sure. So.
I sure did, watching Bad Boys 2 for the second time. I never thought that I would have to watch this movie more than once, but here we are, and I did watch it.
Yeah.
So Bad Boys 2, very popular though in 2003. Grossed $273.3 million on its budget of $130 million. So not a cheap movie to make, but made its money back and was the 10th highest grossing movie of 2003. Of course, it's the sequel to the first Bad Boys from 1995, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence as possibly the worst cops ever to be on the Miami police force.
I mean, they get it done. They solve the cases. They put the bad guys in the jail, huh?
No, they put a lot of people in their graves, I think, is what they end up doing here. And solving the case, not worth what the cost, I think, in this film, at least. They bust some ecstasy dealers. That's what they end up doing in this film. And yes.
Josh, your allegiance to Haitian street gangs and the Ku Klux Klan has once again shown itself.
No. I mean, even the Ku Klux Klan are like minor. And what do they do with the Ku Klux Klan? They break the guy, they bail the one guy out of jail, the KKK member played by Michael Shannon, who becomes like a comic relief sidekick.
I mean, that whole subplot is one, extremely unnecessary, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't add anything to the movie. It's just, and when you see the Klan, you're like, oh, cool. These are, that's what you say whenever you see the Klan, but but in a movie, you're like, okay, here are the bad guys, right? But they're like really there for like 6 minutes and then 3 minutes at the end or something like that.
Right. They're not, they're just superfluous. And I don't even remember exactly what their role is.
They're buying drugs.
There's the supply chain of the ecstasy that's being brought. Is the ecstasy being brought from Cuba? Or it's just the money for the ecstasy is going back to Cuba because the main bad guy is a Cuban drug dealer played by Jordi Molla.
I think the point here is that the Klan, according to Michael Bay, are just innocent drug addicts.
They're just wacky.
All the bad guys are, of course, the non-whites.
Yeah, even the Russian mobster, played by Peter Stormare, is just kind of like a comic relief figure. Even though he gets brutally murdered by random background cops, it's just funny.
Yeah, but
apparently.
again, he was betrayed by a minority, so the white guy,
True,
again,
he was.
got it.
Yes, played by a white guy, Jordi Moya, who is Spanish, not Cuban.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not white.
But
he's from Spain.
Let's not get into that. So yes, it was very popular. But lest we think that I'm the only person who thinks that this movie is bad. I
don't think anyone thought you were the only person.
No, because movie. I know that I'm Dave loves this. And you seem to have kind of enjoyed it. So I feel like I was going to end up on this episode as the one person trashing this film. And I wanted to make it clear that many other people have as well.
And real fast, I think the reason I enjoyed it more than I would have is because I made the terrible mistake of watching Bad Boys, the original one, which is one of the worst movies I can recall watching recently. I remember seeing that in the theater and liking it, but I was 15 at the time. But the first Bad Boys is so terrible. The fact that it gave off 3 sequels is a real statement on what's wrong with things. So, but this is a huge step up from the first one. So I was probably a little more lenient on it than I should have been.
Yeah, I did not watch the first one again this time, although I have seen it. And I remember I saw both of these. I did not see them in the theaters. I watched them, I'm pretty sure, when the third one came out, and I was preparing to review it, and I watched both of these. And at that time, I thought this one was worse, although it may just have been at least partially that I was so demoralized by having watched the first one that I was like unable to tolerate any further amount of Bad Boys, and thus found this one worse. So I will say I raised my rating slightly on this one for this second viewing, and we'll get to that later.
Dave,
to see what I raised it to.
As the Bad Boys aficionado, the first one's way worse, right?
Well, I mean, I think that it's fun for what it is, but yeah, Bad Boys 2 is leaps and bounds above it. So
yeah, well, I'm not going to rewatch the first one in order to discern that.
Not right now, but once Dave picks it in the next movie draft, you'll be forced.
No, that's I've learned my lesson. I'm going to strategize next time. So audiences loved it. It got an A from CinemaScore, the audience polling service. So that's pretty good. All the people who loved the first one came out to see this one and enjoyed it. Critics, however, not so much. It got 2 thumbs down from Ebert and Roper, and Roper, who said he despised it, named it the worst movie of 2003. And in his written review, Roger Ebert said, Bad Boys 2 is a bloated, unpleasant assembly line extrusion in which there are a lot of chases and a lot of killings and explosions. Oh, it's all done with competent technique. Michael Bay, the director, is a master of this sort of thing, and his screenplay was labored over by at least 4 writers, although there is not an original idea in it. No one in the movie is very interesting. Our eyes glaze over during yet another bone-tired retread of chase scenes that we have seen over and over again. The movie is so choppy in its nervous editing that a lot of the time we're simply watching senseless kinetic action. The chase scenes and shootouts are broken down into close-ups that deny us any sense of the physical relationship of the actors or the strategy of a chase. It's all just movement.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, this is in my letterbox that Go for Jason Josh. I talked about not Go for Jason Josh, Go for Jason.
Yeah,
we know
what you're saying.
Period.
Yeah. No, I talked about how like Michael Bay in is like totally look, at the best I'll call it homaging, but it's like dude, he's taking John Woo stuff, he's taking Jackie Chan stuff from like Police Story, and he's like, they haven't seen it here in America, I'll just do that. But he misses like everything that Ebert's saying, like about like kind of spacing and just kind of showing the depth of the scene. And he's taking amazing stunts, driving a car through a village down a hill, or some of those gun ballet things, and he's just doing it way worse.
Yeah, I was amazed that Dave, like I think you said that various multiple sequences in this movie are like some of the greatest action of all time, because I think the action in this movie is terrible. As Ebert pointed out, you have no sense of where things are or who's doing what. And I mean, the cuts are so quick, but it's not even just that the cuts are quick. It's also like Michael Bay is prioritizing these sort of like cool looking angles versus coherence. And so it becomes almost this abstract thing where you can't follow it. And all you have to go on is like the quipping or whatever, which is also terrible, which is worse than the action, really. So, I mean, I know weirdly.
What is worse than the action?
The quipping, the dialogue, the jokiness between the two characters. But, and where maybe within that, they're going to give you some information about what they're trying to accomplish during this action scene or whatever. And who are these people that they're chasing or shooting at and why. But I mean, the overall like apparent reassessment of Michael Bay among some critics and film fans is baffling to me. To me, the guy is still one of the worst ever.
So, Dave, you deserve a chance to defend your point of view. What are some of the best action sequences in film history in this movie?
I mean, all of them, like beginning to end, everything that happens. That's the thing. Like this movie, I mean, Michael Bay, we know, is so just over the top, raising everything to 11. That's kind of his whole style. And as far as the choppiness or like any of the direct criticisms Josh is throwing at it, which I'm not going to sit here and like try to say like, no, you should like Michael Bay for this reason. I mean, you're either on board or you're not, but it's just live action cartoon work. That's what he brings to the table, and you either like that because it's so insane and ridiculous, or you don't.
I mean, I think I like the idea of live action cartoon stuff, but this isn't, I mean, we could talk about like Hundreds of Beavers, for example, from this year, which is a great movie, very, very fun to watch, absolutely live action cartoon. And this stuff has no sense of humor about itself. I mean, there's a lot of jokes in, air quotes here in this film, but the film has no sense, and Michael Bay has no sense of humor about himself and his own style.
I can tell you that from personal experience.
Oh yeah, well, we've heard your Michael Bay story.
We've heard that story.
It's weird. I feel like Jason has told his Michael Bay story probably more than once. Although this is the first episode we've done about an actual Michael Bay film.
Yeah, and I really do think that there is a self-referential humor here. I think that he is kind of making fun of what he's doing at the time. But I mean, I don't know. Based on your experience, but. That's what comes through, though, to me while I'm watching these movies. I think that he recognizes how ridiculous all this is.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous, but I feel like not ridiculous in the way that we would understand it, but ridiculous in the sense of ridiculously awesome, I think, is the way that Michael Bay views himself in his films.
I mean, and all those like kind of old articles where like Fincher's like talking about like what a hack Michael Bay is, and Michael Bay's like, fuck this guy, he just doesn't know how to make a movie, right? And so I just would say like, I'm going to have to disagree on your assessment of that, Dave. And but Josh, I know what you're saying, but I'm telling you, these characters are so much more like deplorable and unwatchable in the first one. Like, this is a true, like, oh, what a nice reprieve. They're not as terrible as they used to be.
And that just makes me think the first one must be even worse than I remember, because they're so unpleasant to watch in this movie. They're some of the worst characters you can imagine, I think. So to think that they're worse in the first movie is just kind of astounding.
Dave, would you agree with that? Or
I don't know. I love them from beginning to end, guys.
Yeah. So
Dave's a bad boy.
A.O. Scott in the New York Times said, quite a bit was clearly spent on the assaultive, bombastic, and occasionally funny spectacle that is Bad Boys 2. Mr. Bay may lack restraint, also taste, wit, and shame, but he does have an undeniable flair for sleaze, noise, and vulgarity. One of his most impressive feats is to film a nightclub rave scene so that the camera glides under the skirts and between the legs of the women. A similarly cold, aggressive voyeurism characterizes the film's violence, which is relentless and often gruesome. The last half hour, during which an ornate Cuban villa and a hillside shantytown are demolished, bloats the experience into a supersized fast food meal. Thousands of useless calories are added at no extra cost, to the viewer, that is. Afterward, you feel sluggish and glutted, groggy and numb.
But it gives Will Smith the chance to yell like this. He loves yelling.
Oh, man, he does. Everyone is yelling. I mean, Joey Pants, literally, I don't think he has a single line that he doesn't yell in this entire movie.
I can give you that one as like the, if there is some kind of intentional humor, as like the captain who's like, bad boys, what are you doing? I'm just trying to retire,
I mean, I'd like to give credit for that, but I really don't think there's that level of self-awareness here. I think it's just straight-faced, they're pissing the captain off and he's going to be, mad about it. So
he's mad because they're bad.
He is. Mm-hmm. He is indeed mad. Yeah, because they have strewn carnage across the entire city of Miami.
They get results.
No, they don't. They do not get results. They fail constantly to get any meaningful results to protect the public in any way. I feel like that's the thing. It's not like, they don't follow the rules, but they get the job done. No, they don't. They completely do not get the job done. No justice is served at any moment in this film.
They got the bad guy in the end. The bad boys got the bad guy.
Yeah, they killed him and then they both shot him in the head and then blew him up in half.
As you should for a really bad guy like that.
I mean, but you're not stopping the drug trade just by blowing that one guy up, right? If that is theoretically the point here.
Now, Josh, now you're getting into the deeper text of the film, thankfully. Good job, Josh. Because Martin Lawrence is always like, Mike Lowry, don't kill the bad guys because we don't have any witnesses. And then Will Smith is like,
exactly. And furthermore, one of the worst scenes in this film is the scene where, for reasons that I could not figure out, Martin Lawrence's character accidentally takes ecstasy, right? And this is the ecstasy. It's like super ecstasy.
You couldn't figure it out?
Well, why did he, I understood that he accidentally took the ecstasy, but how and why did he do that?
The pills, he's holding the bottle of pills and something jars his arm and two of the pills pop into the water that he drinks and everything.
Yeah, I saw the pills in the water, but I think I missed how they got there. But anyway,
Josh,
the point is...
completely reasonable way to end up on ecstasy.
Right. The point is he takes the ecstasy, the super ecstasy, that the entire purpose of their mission is to stop this. The reason that possibly hundreds of people have died, right? And he just kind of acts goofy for a little while.
Yeah, it just makes him chill, bro.
That's all. No big deal.
And he takes two of them.
Right. And for this, they're murdering people, blowing things up, destroying an entire shanty town of poor Cubans.
Michael Bay is commenting on, the police force and their overreach and all of that.
No, he sure is not.
Yes, he is.
By the way, that chase where they're driving through the village in Cuba and just destroying it, I think that's right out of Police Story, if I'm not mistaken, the Jackie Chan movie, and it's awesome in the Jackie Chan movie.
I haven't seen Police Story, but I think I did see at least one reference that mentioned that it was copied from that, and I'm happy to believe that it's much better.
High recommendation for Police Story, and we've talked about Hard Boiled on here and some John Woo stuff. That's the two that really kind of, I'm like, oh, he's just putting this on repeat right now.
Right. I mean, we talked about John Woo in our episode on Mission Impossible 2, which is certainly not John Woo's best film, but even that I think is far, far preferable to this one. So finally, critic-wise, Scott Tobias in the AV Club said, Smith, Lawrence, hothead police captain Joe Pantoliano, and a heaping dollop of homosexual panic all reprise their roles for the sequel, which reheats another generic plot about murderous drug lords and busted scores. As the stars ease too confidently into their familiar chemistry, in this gas guzzler of a film, they get incredible mileage out of Marcus getting shot in the ass. Bay ratchets up the Maxim factor with plenty of girls, gears, guns, and gadgets. The Redux would be merely shameless were it not so unsettling. If Bay's 2.5-hour assault on the senses isn't enough cause to reach for the Pepto, there's also the disquieting punchlines of a KKK cross-burning ceremony and desecrated corpses splattering on the city streets. Bad Boys 2 is the rare case in which escapism involves leaving the theater.
Well, Josh, as you know, in my short film Sally Pepper's Neighborhood Detective, we do use a cross burning for comedic effect, so I can't really speak on that. So
no, and you could, but it's not even used for comedic effect here, really. It's just like a background thing that he kind of is like, cross burning.
Did you purposely not try to find one positive review?
Well, okay. One, yes. And two, there are very, 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 very few positive. This has a 24% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's not like there were a lot of good reviews here. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to make it clear that this was not a film that almost any critic liked. So, sorry.
Absolutely fair for this kind of movie.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, Jason, you were watching Bad Boys 1 again. Had you seen this one before?
No, I never saw this one or any of the two other sequels because I guess Bad Boys didn't make that much of an impression on me. But the one thing, and I don't mind having to watch it, and I did like it better than the first one, but we're recording this at the end of the year when we're trying to stack like all the 2024 movies that we haven't seen, like so I can do like my proper top 10. And instead, I had to take 4.5 hours and watch the first two Bad Boys movies this week. So that didn't really ingratiate you to me, Dave.
Well, are you going to watch the new one because it is a 2024 movie?
No.
Oh, that's true. Bad Boys 4 is that going to be on your top 10 list, Dave?
Maybe tune in and find out.
Yeah. What a Dave is really great at like marketing himself on our podcast
as
like
having terrible taste.
he gets pop-up album plugs in and Piecing It Together plugs in. He does a good job with that.
Yeah. Well, I will say, Jason, as far as you're catching up on films from this year, you do not need to watch Bad Boys 4. That's my assessment of it.
I mean, I'm not going to watch it right now. There is a part of me that like once I start a franchise, I want to complete it. And I'm like, if I watch 10 minutes of the next ones a day, like maybe over 2 months, I can knock these out or whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and I had seen all of these before. Like I said, I think I caught up with these first two because I was going to review the third one that just came out in 2020. And so I saw that one when it came out, and I saw the fourth one when it came out earlier this year. And I actually feel like those are slightly better, even though they're terrible. But they're not Michael Bay, and I feel like maybe because those directors don't have the like brand name, they're more focused on just straightforward action movie stuff. And they're not good, but they're not as bad, is my thought. So, Dave, I know you've seen all of these probably multiple times.
Yeah, I think I'm not alone in saying this. The third one is kind of those new directors doing the first one, and then the fourth one that came out this year is those new directors doing Bad Boys 2. They just go, to 11 again. They're trying to just go as over the top as they possibly can. So I loved this year's Bad Boys, whereas the third one, it's fine. It's not the best.
So, for the record, like I like insane action movies that go balls to the wall. I mean, think of Crank or something like that. But this is no Crank, Josh.
I agree. I mean, I like that stuff too. And like Dave was saying about live action cartoons, and I think Crank is a good example of that, where it's so absurd and so over the top. You're not considering like the consequences of any of these things or whatever. And stylistically, it's just as hyperactive as this, but I feel like with greater purpose and clarity than this has. And it's a much more entertaining. Also, it's like an hour shorter, I think, probably than this.
That's my biggest, my biggest problem with this movie is how long it is.
Totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dave, I mean, did your love of this begin by seeing this in the theater?
So, no, I did see it in the theater, but I don't think I even really liked the Bad Boys movies back when they came out. And I didn't like 3, like I said. I thought it was just fine. And then in the lead up to 4, because I was doing a live show on it, I was like, well, I really should rewatch these. And I just fell in love with them when revisiting them. I just and probably a big part of it is because of how much I loved Ambulance a couple of years ago. And I just kind of had a new appreciation for the whole Michael Bay thing, and yeah, I just really connected with it this time around.
A lot of people love Ambulance.
Yeah, it seems like that was partly the catalyst for people somehow deciding that Michael Bay doesn't suck, and I am not in favor of that at all. So, anything else about the background of this film you want to mention, Jason?
In one of your reviews, you mentioned that there were at least 4 writers. That's like saying that there's at least $1 in Fort Knox, Josh.
Right. Yeah, it's astounding how many people worked on this piece of shit.
I have Cormac and Marion Wibberley, obviously the two credited writers, Ron Shelton, Jerry Stahl. Then I have the screenwriting luminaries, including John Lee Hancock, Judd Apatow, including Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, Brian Koppelman and David Levian. And then I have a whole nother list of about 10 more writers in there, including Brian Helgeland and Ron Bass, Larry Ferguson, Tony Gilroy. Just there's a lot of writers in here, Josh. So.
I mean, it's insane that you would need even one writer to write this film. And Michael Bay is famous, right, for the idea that he tells screenwriters, like, don't even write action scenes, just write action.
Write the word
he'll
action.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, so how much do you need for this story, which, as the reviews point out, is just a generic, like, guy is importing drugs. Like, write that down, write action under it, hand it to Michael Bay, done. So just the testament to the waste in Hollywood for this garbage, but maybe not waste, right? Because again, it made a lot of money. It was a huge success and they don't care if critics trashed it, right? Who cares where the thumbs went because it made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So
shockingly, there wasn't a joke in here where one of the well, it would be Will Smith's thumb ending up in Martin Lawrence's ass by mistake. You know, what's your thumb doing there?
Absolutely. All right, we'll come back and talk more of our general thoughts on Bad Boys 2. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our special 20th retrospective season, we're talking about one of our producer Dave's picks, Bad Boys 2 from 2003. And Dave, take it away here. Why do you think that this is a great movie?
I mean, I think it's freaking hilarious. And it's not just their rapport, which, you know, you could love it or you could hate it. I mean, obviously I'm not alone here, but I'm alone here on the podcast today. But, you know, I think that their rapport is so much fun. And I think mainly it's just the insanity of this. And I know, Josh, you say it's not, but I mean, some of the shit going down, the whole entire white power sequence is just so, to start a movie with that is just so ridiculous. Then as we get out of there, I mean, there's one part where the drug dealers are getting ready to like head out for the big chase sequence. And I think one of them is blowing a chauffeur. And like, I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
You're talking about the Jewish horn that is.
Yes.
Yeah. He's not performing oral sex on a limo driver. Right?
Although you could see that would fit here perfectly too.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole like Abbott and Costello exterminators sequence. I mean, like all of this is so freaking ridiculous.
That exterminator sequence is so terrible.
Tell us why, Josh. Tell us why.
I mean, I think the primary reason is because they're not funny, right? I mean, and as we've talked about with various comedies, like if Dave says he laughed, like I can't say, no, you didn't, right? Sure, I mean, he obviously found it funny, but I just find their dynamic so excruciatingly annoying. And then that exterminator sequence where, I mean, Martin Lawrence is just like, Abbott and Costello are Daniel Day-Lewis compared to what Martin Lawrence does in this film. I mean, the mugging is just out of control. And
I'm going to jump in here. Martin Lawrence is the far more credible actor in this dynamic. And, you know, maybe it's my undying love for his work in The Beach Bum, but like I'm watching it, I'm like, this dude, I would totally cast him as like a dad in something. Like he's often the straight man for the Will Smith stuff in this. And Will Smith to me is not delivering on the comedy.
I mean, I'm not going to argue that Will Smith is not bad here. I mean, he is very bad and annoying. I mean, I don't know if I thought Martin Lawrence was worse overall. I just saying in that sequence, I feel like that's the height of the idea of his character just being like, oh, like ghost, you know, like he could fit in with the Ritz brothers, right, Dave?
He totally could. And by the way, to that point, my favorite part of the whole movie, I'm sure you guys could probably guess, but it's when his dog pulls down his above ground pool. And
so great they do it twice.
At least.
at least twice.
It's just so stupid. It's so great.
That's the big joke. It's not so great. It's a joke.
No, and it's not
fine
even
that
a
it
funny
happens
joke.
once, but so like
so good.
And I mean,
good.
he has like a waterfront property that would have cost millions of dollars, and yet he's like, "Oh, I gotta have an above ground pool."
Right.
Because it was $2,900, which I think, wasn't there a callback where something else was $2,900 or something?
I don't know, but they're literally right on the water. Why don't they just swim in the beautiful ocean right there or whatever?
Right. I mean, the pool, when it empties, it just empties into the ocean and they just kind of slide in there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it
Amazing.
took 18 writers to come up with that joke, apparently.
So here's something I noticed, and I'm wondering, and I mentioned this to Josh. We know what Marvel fatigue is. Like, I've had superhero fatigue before that was a term. I think, Dave, you and I, on piecing it together, I told you I've had The Rock fatigue for what, like, I'm automatically turned off if I see The Rock is in a movie now, because I know it's just like there's no soul behind any of it, right? It's just like, hey, what kind of cash grab can I do to please everybody but not make anyone happy? That type of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I think I have Will Smith fatigue, man. And I don't know if it's dating back to the Oscars or what, but I'm not excited by anything he does. I don't look forward to anything he does. Like, it almost turns me off now that he's in a movie. And I loved, stuff like Independence Day. I think he's great in Ali. Like, he's a very capable actor as both a movie star and as a dramatic actor, but I don't want to see him do anything anymore.
And I think I'm kind of with you there, because I was feeling that as well until I watched the new Bad Boys this year. And I feel like that was part of the conversation around that movie, where everyone was like, oh, wow, Will Smith could still open a movie, even after everybody kind of turned on him and decided he sucks.
Well, not everyone turned on him. He slapped a man for making a benign joke about his wife.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not so much Will Smith fatigue, because those other things you're talking about, like superhero movies or The Rock, it's like constantly being pushed in our face. But even at the height of his popularity, Will Smith wasn't nearly in as many movies as The Rock, and has a wider variety of roles than The Rock. I mean, part of fatigue, I think, comes from seeing the same thing over and over again, whether it's the same kind of superhero movie or The Rock doing the same kind of part. But Will Smith has a lot more range than The Rock does. And as you said, he's done some great dramatic work. He can be in these big blockbusters. He can do comedic stuff. And I've liked Will Smith in a lot of stuff, and I'm open, if he's in something else, whatever he's got going on next, I'd be open to checking that out. I mean, I didn't obviously enjoy Bad Boys 4, and I didn't see Emancipation, which was the last like serious movie that he did. But I'm okay with seeing him again, as long as it's not Bad Boys 5. I mean, I think part of it is, I think it all comes down to Michael Bay, because we talk all about these action scenes, and that's a huge part of it. But the performances are also down to the director, right? And it's not just Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Like, all of the acting in this movie is shockingly just terrible, like just across the board awful. And some of it is clearly choices that Michael Bay is giving. Like, all of the Cuban characters and or Latino characters in general, including like the other bad boys, right? The other team of detectives that are sort of like the rivals of our main characters, do these incredibly exaggerated accents. And I was looking this up. I looked up like interviews with all these actors to be sure. And other than, Jordi Molla, who plays the main villain, he is Spanish, so he has an accent, but it's much less strong than he does in the film. And otherwise, all of these guys are American. They speak English with American accents. And so they're all doing these like exaggerated voices here. And I guarantee, I can imagine Joey Pants delivering lines and Michael Bay being like, louder, yell more.
Yeah.
That's what it is here. It's all down to him.
I think you're totally right too, because it is a Michael Bay thing. It's what he wants out of these actors. And so, if you don't like it, it's probably Michael Bay's fault here.
You apply to that to so many things, really.
I just, Jordi Molla, I didn't know him before this movie. I looked him up. He's got 3 Goya nominations for, acting. So he's clearly a capable actor. He's nothing in this movie. Like, he is not a menacing bad guy at all. He's just, hey, Gabrielle Union, you're pretty. Let's sell drugs and do sex. It's like there's nothing there. There's nothing there to him at all. Like, his mom is a more convincing bad guy than he is. So.
Right. I mean, and I think you kind of need that in a movie like this. You do need like an over-the-top evil guy. Sure, let's have it be crazy. but somebody that you can root for the heroes to get. There's no satisfaction to seeing this guy killed at the end because he's just a nothing presence, as Jason is saying. And so that's a failing, even if you enjoy this kind of thing, right? You need that. And I don't recall, I can't even tell you who the villains were in any of the other Bad Boys movies. I feel like they've never done a good job of that.
Well, let me think, because I literally just watched the first one last week, and I don't think I remember who the bad guy is in that either.
Yeah, Dave, are there memorable villains in any of these?
Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for Jason about Bad Boys 4, but
no, please do.
The villain in the third one becomes like a hero in the fourth one, and he's actually really good. I forget what that actor's name is, but I like.
Yeah, because they're trying to Fast and Furious it.
Yeah, they totally are. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I like Jordi Molla here. I think he's so inept and so ridiculous. And again, it leads to me viewing this as a comedy, really. Like,
but I don't.
Really,
but I gotta just jump in with like I didn't get any of that. How did I miss that he was playing a Three Stooges bad guy and not like a real? He's where does that fit into the movie? I don't understand. I'm confused.
He's just ridiculous. He's just absolutely silly.
He's inept. I'll give you that, but I don't see any of the. Like,
yeah, but he's not comedically inept. He's
right,
just sort of like
I don't understand.
Dull. I mean, he's not inept enough, right? He's obviously running this empire, and he has like underlings who betray him or whatever. You know, he takes over Peter Stormare's portion of the whatever. I mean, Peter Stormare is more playing like the comedically ridiculous villain, right? But he barely has a role. And I didn't see that as being, if it was more over the top funny, then you could say, okay, he's just ridiculous. But then in a weird way, that also makes it worse because it's then like, so what are they doing? They're mowing down all of these people to get at this like goofy Three Stooges bad guy who's not even worth the effort.
I just didn't get that. I do think there is humor in it, definitely much more effective than the first one. And I think that's because you have like Ron Shelton and Jerry Stahl working on the script there. But I did not get that from the bad guy here.
Can we, speaking of the humor, Dave, can you defend the scene in the electronics store where they go on the camcorder and everyone thinks they're gay?
I mean, look, it's as low brow as you could possibly get. I laughed that they kept it going for as long as they did. I can tell you that.
I mean, here, I'll defend it. Not that it's funny, but that it was 2003 and this was like, it's not the first or last time we've seen this stupid trope, right?
Yeah, okay. But you can think that and say, oh, like this was commonplace or whatever. But as I quoted in that review from Scott Tobias, and as Ebert and Roper talk about in their segment, in both cases, they're referencing how homophobic this movie is. So it's not like that was something that people weren't paying attention to in 2003. It was blatant then. And it's blatant now. And there's multiple moments. Not only that, I mean, that scene is the one where it's like the whole point of it is like, haha, what if people thought that they were gay? But the whole bit about Martin Lawrence getting shot in the ass also just leads to just like constant gay panic jokes. And I mean, not only is it like offensive and not funny, but Jason, you know, you are always talking about it's lazy.
Yeah,
right? This is the laziest form of comedy.
I agree with that 100%. And Josh, I think you're underestimating it just by leaving it at homophobia. Don't forget, there's also like the guy in the convenience store. I am Middle East. I will shoot you. You know, like come on. Man.
And a lot of racist jokes about those Latino cops with their fake accents.
Well, and they say and vice versa. That you know, like, hey, were you guys out eating fried chicken because you're black? Like it was a lot of. But back and forth, lowest level style racist jokes. So.
Yeah, and it is, and I'm not going to defend that necessarily, but I am going to just say that was very in at the time.
But that's not a defense, I don't think.
No, I'm not. I'm not defending. I'm just saying that is what a lot of humor was at that moment.
I mean, and you know that's true. Like I used to, you know, tell jokes about different races on stage, and I still think you can do it, but I don't think I would go about doing it the same way because I think. You know, comedy evolves and your understanding of comedy evolves and you do better, you know?
Yeah. But again, my point is that like, it's not like no one thought of this being offensive in 2003, including, the mainstream. It wasn't some obscure thing. It was, the guys on TV reviewing movies were talking about this, pointing it out as one of the shortcomings here. And I mean, or the scene where they intimidate the guy who comes to take Martin Lawrence's daughter out. And Will Smith is doing this absurd, like stereotypical, thug gangster thing. And I feel like it's, going to like the idea that we talk about with Quentin Tarantino, where you feel like he's a white guy who's excited he can get a black actor to say the N-word. And I feel like that's what Michael Bay is also doing in that scene.
I mean, I was almost shocked because I didn't expect Will Smith to say the N-word once, let alone 100 times in this film. So
yeah,
that definitely is noticeable,
It is. And not in not in a funny way, not in a way that's making commentary on like how this word is used or appropriated or anything. It's just like, wouldn't it be funny if we got this famous black guy to say a racist slur?
I will just say again, I don't want to spoil anything for Jason, but we get a great payoff in the new Bad Boys for that sequence. So,
okay.
I mean, great is not a word I would use.
My theater was cheering, like full on applaud. So
that is so sad. I pity all these people.
But Josh, you keep blaming Michael Bay. Will Smith is the biggest movie star in the world at this point. He could have easily said, "No, I'm not going to do that."
Right? No, I know. I mean, I think Michael Bay is ultimately the one who is responsible, whether he is saying, "Hey, let's do this," and Will Smith is agreeing, or he is adjusting what they're doing, or is coming up with things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, certainly, as big a deal as Michael Bay was, yes, Will Smith was just as big a deal, if not more so. And if he thought that scene was not okay, he could have nixed it, or they could have adjusted it in some way and had his character do something else. So I'm not trying to let him off the hook, or anyone in this movie. It's obviously in any movie, the performances are a collaboration between the actors and the director. And, Michael Bay is asking for something and they're giving it to him, and they're adding their own elements to it. And all of these performances, like I said, they're all just bad. They're all very unpleasant to watch.
It's a strange thing when you see like a Michael Shannon who doesn't really miss as an actor, and you're just like, why is he in this movie? Right. And I agree with you that the leads have definitely done better stuff. The thing that bummed me out, it was nice seeing Gabrielle Union get a juicy part that's not like before this it was a lot of like hot rival teenager stuff, right?
Yeah. And she played teenagers for like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like they blew it. I know why they did it, but like at first I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing that the cop's sister is like a facilitator for drugs all over the world, and now he's gonna have to go against his sister. And then Will Smith's dating her, and so like there's all these like kind of interesting dynamics they could have played. And then she's just undercover and it becomes another set piece type.
Well, and not only is she just undercover and she's not like a criminal, but then they just make her a damsel in distress for the finale. And certainly Michael Bay is not known for his sensitive portrayal of women in any films ever. Mm. But it is disappointing because at first it seems like, hey, she's like a real character, and they're giving her, I mean, as much as anyone in this movie is a real character, but they're giving her as much dimension and as much to do as the two main characters. And then she just gets kidnapped and they have to go rescue her. So I will say that as an actor, maybe she is the least bad in this film. I don't know.
I mean, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, what about the corpses that get thrown out of cars? Are they good actors?
Oh yeah, they're really
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino's cameo with the product placement for the car. I mean, we haven't even discussed all the product placement, the beer trucks and the Pepsi trucks and all that stuff. I mean, that's another Michael Bay trademark that we've got going on here.
Well,
and
I was sorry to jump in. You're right, that is. But I was going to say, the other professional athlete who had a nice little run in this franchise, John Spider Sally, is Fletcher. He's good fun. He's comedy. He's good.
I guess, yeah, he plays the hacker, and he, I don't know if we want to spoil Bad Boys 4, but
dies in it or whatever.
They just kill him off in Bad Boys 4. But, no, I mean, and going back to the portrayal of women, I didn't notice it, but I guess Megan Fox is one of the dancers in that strip club scene at age 15. So,
yeah, I was reading about that, and, and obviously, like, what I'm wondering is like what happened? Where were her parents? Like, why did they agree to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they did, and it's not like she's naked or whatever. I mean, it was not illegal but it's definitely not a good look.
No, of course, and she said like, hey, it wasn't cool. At the same time, she was never pressured in any weird way by him. But
yeah,
no, I'm just saying what I read, dude.
Right?
I'm just saying,
that's true. You're right. You're right.
Why didn't So like, you got to say that, but also like, why didn't her parents? I don't know her background, but you would think like her parents be like, hey, it's not cool to do this with a 15-year-old, right? And they didn't. So I don't know what to say. So you can't just blame the one guy if there's other people involved. So.
I guess, but to be at that point, to say like, hey, let's get this hot 15-year-old to be in her underwear in this strip club scene, and then have to rely on parents being like, no. I mean, you're right. Parents should have said that. And I don't know what Megan Fox's situation. Sadly, not all parents are responsible. And if they thought, hey, our hot teenage daughter is going to be in this big blockbuster movie and, get paid, then maybe that's what they went for. But the fact that Michael Bay wanted that in the first place definitely does not speak well to his character, is all. Or his artistic vision for what he wants in films.
I don't think he has an artistic vision.
No, I mean, he does. Like, as much as he sucks, I think he does have an artistic vision. In part, that's why he sucks, is because he's clearly doing this stuff on purpose. He's not inept, right? He's not just a shitty guy. He is like someone who doesn't know what they're doing or whatever. He absolutely, as Ebert points out, like, he knows what he's doing. It just is terrible. So I don't know. I feel like I've exhausted my complaints here. I don't know if you want to offer any more defenses, Dave. Anything else you like that we have trashed or didn't talk about?
Well, I actually won't. What I'll do instead is I already mentioned that the length is my biggest problem with the movie. My other problem with the movie, Bad Boys 1, as much as Jason hated it, has a great score. And this one replaces that with some Dr. Dre beats and just
executive music consultant Sean P. Diddy Combs.
And that Shake It Tail Feather from P. Diddy. He basically turned this whole soundtrack into an opportunity to, I read he relaunched Bad Boys Entertainment with this movie's soundtrack. So the music really suffers here. And that was the other kind of negative for me from this movie.
Yeah, I got to jump in and agree with you on that. It's one, it's not good. Two, that you don't need to play Shake Your Tail Feather once, let alone 17 times. And three, I remember when that song came out, I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. What was I thinking back in 2008? That is a terrible rap song. But it was a huge hit, Yeah. So, and this soundtrack was a huge hit. It was reached all the way to number 1. It's platinum,
So many people with terrible taste.
Dave, what's P. Diddy up to now?
Gee, who knows?
let's go into that. Yeah,
doing great. Everything worked out for him so well.
By the way, when we did the draft, that hadn't really started yet, right? Like, I think there was maybe some rumors, but yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's a reason not to draft it because his music's on it.
Yeah, I would have picked it. I would have picked it anyway. Yeah.
Stars in this or directed it or anything like that. I mean, his involvement is minimal, and I'm sure we've talked about multiple movies produced by Harvey Weinstein on this show. Sure. So that's
right.
fine.
I mean, P. Diddy, he was in Made, he was in Monsters Ball. There's you wouldn't not watch those movies simply because he's in them.
I mean, you could not watch them for other reasons, but that's a separate discussion.
Right. So, but those two movies are, I mean, I haven't never seen Monsters Ball, but it won an Oscar for Halle Berry, and Made's a good movie. So.
Yeah. Well, this is not relevant here. So
we'll get him to the Greek with him and Russell Brand. Josh, you like that one, right?
Yeah. And Jonah Hill too. It's a real all-star cast in that film.
Everyone has problems.
They do. They do. That's one way to put it. So let's rate this film. Dave,
out of 5 tail feathers?
Out of 5 tail feathers. Dave, we'll give you the first crack at it.
4.5 tail feathers from
me. My God.
All right. Well, after watching the first Bad Boys, which I gave 2 and probably deserves 1, I was like, this is a marked improvement. And I'm going to give it 3, which I did on Letterboxd. But in honor of Dave changing Letterboxd scores on the episode, I will drop this to 2.5.
All right.
Very, very generous of you.
I agree.
As I said, I raised my rating. On my first viewing of this, had given it half a tail feather. And only, I believe, because Letterboxd does not allow you to rate things as a 0. And on this viewing, I will raise it to 1 tail feather. I believe, I was glancing through, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this is my least favorite film that we have ever covered on this show.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great.
I think the only movie that I gave as low a rating on Letterboxd was another favorite of Dave's, The Room. So
The Room is
nice.
and I'd rather watch The Room again, I think, than watch this. Yeah.
There you go.
Dave, you have finally avenged 1953 for me.
We'll come back and talk about the legacy of Bad Boys 2. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our special retrospective 20th season, we're talking about producer Dave's pick, Bad Boys 2. And we've been mentioning the sequels. And so that's kind of the main legacy here, even though it took a long time. This movie came out in 2003. It was a big hit. I feel like almost right away, there was talk about making another one, but it wasn't until 2020 that Bad Boys for Life, the third film, directed by Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, I think they're Belgian directors, was released. And then the fourth movie, Bad Boys Ride or Die, earlier this year. And like I said, I find them slightly more tolerable. And Dave, you're mixed on those.
Yeah, I think that they have really kind of come into their own with this year's, and so now I hope they do another one. I hope it's not a big long wait again. You know, I'm down. I'm down for more. I think that their rapport is like, again, you know, whether you like it or not, I think it's like way back into what I was hoping for from these guys.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what movie it was, but Josh, you remember in the 90s, whatever Martin Lawrence movie came out when he got out of jail and he goes to see the lady and he's like, when I left, you was all like, plickety cow. And now you like, whoop-boom.
I think that was in the trailer for whatever movie that was.
Yeah,
I sadly do remember, even though is it Blue Streak or maybe one of the
I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's one of my all-time favorite movie commercial lines.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. And in addition to those movie sequels, I mentioned to Jason, this is a forgotten thing, I feel like, even though it was just from a few years ago, but there was also a spin-off TV show about Gabrielle Union's character called LA's Finest, where her character moves to LA and joins the police force there and partners up with a character played by Jessica Alba. This ran for 2 seasons somehow, this TV show, and featured guest appearances by John Sally as his character before he got killed off in Bad Boys 4. And I did look up I had reviewed this show when it first premiered, and I called it the definition of inessential. So
there you go.
Not surprising that people have forgotten it. Dave, as a Bad Boys fanatic, have you ever seen LA's Finest?
I completely forgot it existed until you just brought it up. So
what about the Bad Boys Miami video game based on this, Dave?
That I do remember there being a thing, but I haven't played it though.
Disappointing.
Well,
sorry guys. Sorry.
Yeah. Michael Bay, somehow people like him now. I still just
people
can't
always
wrap my head
liked
around
him,
this.
Josh. I mean,
somehow critics and like cinephiles like him now.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just trying to swim against the current. I mean, The Rock was a good movie. You know, that's the one I'll give him. So.
I guess I haven't seen that in a long time, but I remember seeing Armageddon in the theater I guess it would have been in high school or something, and coming out of that theater and whoever I was with, teenage boys being like, oh, that was awesome. And even then thinking, what? No, that was not awesome. And I certainly, as we've talked about, liked plenty of garbage as a teenager, but for some reason, Michael Bay, even then, just did not get to me.
I was listening to this because, obviously my story of Michael Bay is questioning the logic in the scene in The Rock, which we've talked about before. But someone, I forget, it must have been on like Big Picture. They were like talking about Armageddon, and they were like, yes, instead of training astronauts to learn how to drill, they thought it would be easier to train drillers to learn to be astronauts. That's the backbone of that movie.
And there's that famous clip from the Ben Affleck commentary on Armageddon that I feel like goes around the internet all the time, where Ben Affleck says that he brought that up to Michael Bay, and Michael Bay was like, "Shut up, Ben Affleck."
That's what happened to me when I brought up the Rock thing with like, why is he have to memorize this if there's a door? Shut up, you're not supposed to notice that, you know.
Right. And I've only seen that clip, but I feel like whenever that comes up, people mention that commentary, I think, is just Ben Affleck like trashing the movie the whole time, which I think is great.
Well, I will say, look, Ambulance does have a lot of fans. I haven't seen it. Dave, maybe we'll do a movie swap in the upcoming year and I'll watch it and you can watch something. Yeah, I mean, people do love Ambulance, Josh.
They do. And I mean, I think given the love for Ambulance, was it last year, Dave, that came out in 2023?
Yes.
I remember, I think at the end of the year when we're, as Jason was just referencing, like trying to catch up on notable films and whatever, briefly pondering, do I watch Ambulance? And my answer to that was, fuck no, I'm not going to watch Ambulance. I've endured enough Michael Bay. I don't believe, it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football or whatever. I don't believe that this Michael Bay movie is good.
So you're not going to see Fast and Loose, in which he reteams with Will Smith after the leader of a criminal organization suffers memory loss from an attack. He reunites with his crew only to find that things aren't what he thinks they are, Josh.
I mean, sadly, I might have to see that, but I've somehow avoided the last two. Not only did I not see Ambulance, I didn't see 6 Underground either. Did you see that one, Dave?
Yeah, I at first it's funny because it was a Netflix release, and when I first watched it, I was like, just another Netflix movie, even though Michael Bay was attached. But I rewatched it and I ended up actually liking it. You know, again, it's this whole thing. Also, I got to say, Pain and Gain, one of his best movies as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, and people do like that one. I think that one got more respectable reviews, but I remember watching it. I think I saw it at CinemaCon in the Caesars Palace Coliseum, and just not thinking, no, this is people are at that time. I think it was like people have such low expectations for him that he turns in something that's maybe like marginally coherent dramatically, and they're going crazy for it.
Well, he is going back to robots, not in Transformers, but he is making Robopocalypse. Robots, Josh.
Is he doing that? I feel like that movie has been in development. Steven Spielberg was supposed to direct that at one time. I think it's been
Cameron
in development
also
for like 15 years. Yeah, I don't know if that's.
Why would you want those two when you could have Michael Bay?
Well, Steven Spielberg produced all those Michael Bay Transformers movies. I mean, he's given him the seal of approval.
I think he did this one too. So,
who knows? But so Robots. Michael Bay is going to continue whatever he's doing. We've talked about Will Smith in our Independence Day and Wild Wild West episodes. And so I don't know, he's still, despite his stumbling there, his controversy, as Dave pointed out, Bad Boys 4 brought him back into prominence. Obviously, he's developing another Michael Bay movie. It seems like he's right back on track. He did actually win an Oscar for King Richard. I forgot that was the context of that slap, which is ridiculous. That movie is not good, and he is not good in it.
No.
But
they didn't kick him out of the Oscars when he slapped Chris Rock. So.
No, they let him come back and give his acceptance speech. Although then they later kicked him out, right? They banned him for 10 years. So if he gets an Oscar nomination for that Michael Bay movie, he won't be able to show up and accept his award. But I recently rewatched Focus, which is this kind of con artist comedy thriller with him and Margot Robbie, which was really enjoyable and briefly was like in the top 10 on Netflix because they had it. That was why I rewatched it and wrote about it. And so I do feel like that was a good reminder, like, hey, he's charming and fun to watch in the right context. But Jason, you don't think so?
I mean, I've liked him for a long time. I'm just over it. There's nothing there that's grabbing me anymore. I watched Ali not too long ago, and I thought he was riveting in Ali. He was very good in Ali. But you know what I'm not looking forward to, Josh, is this remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with him and Kevin Hart that's supposed to be coming.
I don't know if any of these things are really happening.
Please don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
I am much more fascinated by Martin Lawrence because I do think he's got like a real, like, you know, I think he's he could be a real good dramatic actor. I love him in The Beach Bum. Of course, I love him on What's Happening Now, Josh. But, you know, little things like Do the Right Thing here, where he's little small parts. I'm like, why we give this guy a showcase as something? I think he could do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as we were talking about this off the show, like I dislike both of them in this film, but there are other examples I can cite of enjoying Will Smith, like I was just talking about. I can't imagine. I don't think I've ever enjoyed Martin Lawrence doing anything. I find him just incredibly irritating. And so I don't know if I would want to see him in a dramatic role. I guess he was recently in some like B-movie thriller called Mind Cage, which I had not heard of, nor have I seen, but that came out like a year or two ago and did give him a chance to do a dramatic role. So I don't know how that worked out for him. But
they are doing Young Martin like they did everybody. What I don't know. Young who Everybody Hates Chris was a young Chris, but they also what was the Big Bang Theory? Young Sheldon.
Young Sheldon. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds terrible, Young Sheldon.
Yeah, I hope they don't. I feel like all of these projects you're reading off are things that were announced and probably are never coming to pass, and I hope they don't.
Martin Lawrence, iconic leather suit in his Def Jam days, though, as a comedian.
Yeah, I mean, and he had a lot of personal problems and mental issues and drugs and whatever, and it seems like he's in a better place now. So I'm happy for that. I wish him the best.
Isn't it his daughter and Eddie Murphy's son are getting married? I think
that's weird, but hey, why not?
They were.
Doesn't Eddie Murphy have like 12 kids? Like he can spare one for Martin Lawrence's daughter.
People love Life. Have you guys ever seen Life with those?
I remember liking it, but I haven't seen it since the theater.
I have not seen it, and I don't love Life anyway. So
fair.
Josh, Oleg Tartakov, who played Joseph Konuniskovich, won UFC 6, and he has MMA victories over Tank Abbott and Mark Kerr. What do you think about that, Josh?
He's the like Peter Stormare's henchman who gets chopped up and put in a barrel?
That sounds right. Who can say it?
He did not have much of an impact on this film. Good for him. Good for him for beating people up in real life. That's nice. That's a real method thing he's got going on there.
I mean, the only other guy that I wanted, from the acting standpoint, we've talked about Michael Shannon, right?
I think so. I mean, he doesn't have a very significant role in this film, but obviously, yes, he's great and is so way better than this film deserves.
Yeah, so I mean, right now you can see him in The End or A Different Man. He's got 2, I think, limited series in Nuremberg and then Death by Lightning, where he plays James Garfield, and it's all about the assassination of that president. So,
all right,
that could be interesting. I mean, we got to talk about the 2 writers. Ron Shelton is like, when you think of like guys who do sports movies, he's got to be at the top of the list. I love White Men Can't Jump to this day. That's a great movie. Come on, Bull Durham. Like these are all-time classic sports movies. I'm not going to say the same thing for Tin Cup, but I do like Blue Chips, which he wrote and was directed by William Friedkin.
Yeah, he's known for that. And I feel like giving credit, as you're pointing out, like despite whoever is actually credited here, how many of these writers, how significant any of their contributions were to what made it into the film is debatable. So I feel like any of them can come out of this with their reputations intact because we don't know what exactly they did here. I mean, I feel like we should give credit to Gabrielle Union. As you said, I mean, she was such a teen movie staple and then finally got to play adult roles. And she mostly still plays supporting roles, but she did have the lead in a Netflix romantic comedy called The Perfect Find, directed by Las Vegas's own Numa Perrier. That was a nice little, as far as those things go. And it was nice to see her getting that lead role, not playing the best friend or at this point, probably the mom or whatever. And so I appreciate that. She's talented and maybe doesn't get the credit she deserves or the roles that she deserves.
She's in a lot of, kind of romantic comedies, Think Like a Man and Top 5 and everything. The next one she's going to be in sounds interesting. The Casket Girls, which is a horror film written by Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben-Garant.
Nice. Yeah, that's all those comedy guys deciding to become horror guys now.
Yeah. Teresa Randall, unsung actress who now is retired here, is in some Spike Lee movies, including Malcolm X, and she was the star of Girl 6. I remember that one. And then the other writer was Jerry Stahl, who you should watch the movie Permanent Midnight, which is based about his experience writing on Alf while he was high on heroin the whole time.
I'm sure more interesting. Maybe everyone was high on heroin making this film. Maybe that's the excuse.
Cocaine, I think.
Yeah, cocaine seems more likely.
I mean, look.
Jerry Bruckheimer, right? Cocaine king of Hollywood, maybe, right?
It was Don Simpson, his dead partner, who was. But,
yes.
Hey,
but I feel like that cocaine era of Hollywood is defined by Bruckheimer and Simpson.
Yeah. I will say, it was kind of clever. Hey, we're transporting drugs through cadavers. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, it took 18 writers to come up with that idea.
It worked. It was.
I did want to mention Jordi Molla, as Jason said, acclaimed and has won awards. But relevant to crap that Dave likes was in Aggro Drift. Did you notice that, Dave?
Yes, absolutely. And you guys were talking about his accent. So he's the lead character, and because it's, first person point of view, that entire movie, Harmony Korine's latest film, you're in his head and you're hearing his voice, and his accent is even thicker. And he spends half the movie talking about how amazing his wife's ass is. And so that's what you're like hearing in your, point of view. It is just the dumbest movie, and I love it so much.
Will we ever be able to see that, or is that just like a touring techno
No, you
band?
can rent it directly from Harmony Korine, like on his website.
Right, on his website now. Yeah.
If you want to give him like $15 to watch this thing,
it's worth it. It's worth it.
I definitely do not. The last thing I wanted to mention, we talked about that scene with Reggie, the guy who comes to take Martin Lawrence's daughter out. That actor, Dennis Green or Dennis McDonald, has exactly 3 acting credits in his entire career, all of which are for playing Reggie in Bad Boys movies. That's all he's ever done.
Reggie,
awesome.
Getting a little franchise going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this film, Jason?
No, I'll leave I cede the floor to Dave.
Dave, any last words on this?
No, I'm just glad we got to talk Aggro Drift.
You aren't glad that
are we going to talk? Is that going to be along with Bad Boys 4 on your top 10 list, or was that last year?
No, that it counts for this year, I think. They're both very much in consideration for my top 10.
Oh man, I can't wait for all the garbage that Dave is going to bring to this top 10 list.
Oh yeah.
So that's Bad Boys 2. That's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can murder us online. I feel like I just said that online and on social media.
AwesomeMovieYear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on the platform that is worse than this film. We got to get on Blue Sky. Let's do that before the holidays are over. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. Go for Jason on Letterboxd. Hey, I got a residency at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club every other Thursday night. Come watch some comedy. We can talk movies afterwards.
That sounds like a lovely time. Check out some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky, and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, it's my pick, and we're going to do some other things besides shake tail feathers. We're going to shake you to your bones with some good punk music. It's a documentary from 1977 called Punk in London.
So tune in next time for Punk in London, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.